Hey, 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 it's Mondays with Tara and Andre. We're going to start in just a second.
Yay!
Hey, hey, Andre.
Hey, Tara.
Happy Monday.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. We're hosting from a little different place this morning.
Mm,
Coffee in bed.
from the bed office, as
From
you
the
call
bed
it.
office, as I call it.
So I feel like I'm still recuperating.
I do too, man. I don't think I've fully recuperated from our very fun party on the weekend, which is what we're talking about today.
Yeah, but I mean, parties are one thing, but we went to bed at like 5 o'clock. The sun was coming up.
I know.
I haven't done it in a while.
I don't think I've done that in a while either. So if anyone's joining us for the first time today, we don't usually host in our bathrobes in bed, but we thought we would do it today because, as we said, we're recovering from an awesome weekend of fun and frivolity with friends. And so today we thought we would talk about how to have a successful sex party. And this is sort of the, post-party review, what went well.
Yeah, trying to gather our senses again. I'm lucky I was able to call my boss and say I had a mental health day, which so be it. But it's fun that we have this position of privilege to be able to do this. But yeah, we should definitely talk about the party because we speak a lot about the prep beforehand. But let's talk about how it actually went and what we could have done better and what went well and what's it like.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we did do a talk a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, on how sex parties, how to be a great host and how to be a great guest. And so we'll make sure we link that in the comments. If you missed it, it was really great. And I know that somebody actually reached out to us after and they said it was really helpful for them as a guest going to a party for the first time. So we're actually going to put that into a guide, and given our experience we had this weekend, we've got some additional tips and things to put in because we did some new things this time, so that was pretty fun.
So I was going to say that like as a host, right, we were thinking about all the things that we should be doing, all the ways that we could be preparing and thinking for our guests what they might like and what they might not like. But then it occurred to me afterwards, I've been to a few parties where I was the guest, and I'm not so sure how great of a guest I was, or was I always. Little things, so it's good to be on both ends of it, but also to have that moment to just pause and think about it so that it informs us to the next time. How could I be a good guest? How could I be a better guest? How could I be a good host? How could I be a better host? So it's good to talk about these things.
Yeah, so we had a good list in that other talk we did, but we thought of some things because there were some really great guests there, so we want to talk about that too. So, but let's start with a bit of participation. Hopefully, you guys can hear us. So, let us know in the chat that if you can hear us and see us. I usually do that at the beginning, but we would love to start with a few questions. So, the first one is: have you hosted a sexy party before? And if you have, put a fire emoji. I love emojis. Have you been a guest at a party? Put a heart. And if you want to do one or the other, maybe put a thumbs up.
Yeah, and it'd be interesting to know if you've been a guest or a host, if it went well and if it went less well, and how that informs you. So, would you ever consider not doing it again because it went south? And could you, of course, correct it? Yeah, I like hearing horror stories.
Yeah, well, the good and the bad, right? Because it informs us, and on how we can make things better. That's why we thought we'd put a guide together, because I'm pretty proud. Like, people were really said it was like a really great party, and people were like from beginning to end, and that made me feel really great. I feel like we did a lot of great things, and we had a lot of help too. So we're going to talk about that too.
Yeah, we sure did. Yeah, we had like a lot of kind of formal help, right? We had like a little party committee who were there helping us. And we had a chairperson, but then we also had some guests who offered some insight as well, and they also gave us some feedback. It's interesting because we had a do's and a don'ts, right? And one of the don'ts was really well received. So we'll tell you a little bit more about that too.
But overall, I think it was like a big thumbs up. Like it was, I have to admit, like, I get stressed hosting any sort of event, as you know. And when our friends came over early in the day to drop stuff off, they were like, should we stay and help? And I was like, no, I'm just, I'm going a little crazy. And so I think I just need to just do the things. So when just as people, we were right down to the wire. We set a time for 7 p.m., an early start. So that was actually a really good thing. But once people started arriving, it was just so amazing. Like, it was a fantastic evening. There was so much laughter. And I remember at one point you stopped me and we're like, look around, look at what a great time everybody's having. And like connection and love and food and drinks, and then the sexy stuff. But it wasn't just about the sexy stuff.
No, it was so much more. It was about the beautiful energy of connecting, meeting people, and having other people meet other people. And it was just, really great vibes, right? Yeah, a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Definitely a lot of fun.
I love it. Okay, so let's maybe jump in. Well, I'm feeling really grateful this morning. I wanted to say that.
Yeah, and me too.
For you for being a co-host. And
yeah, you're an amazing host too. Thank you.
It really wouldn't have been. We wouldn't have been able to do it without each other.
But you know what's cool is our level of attunement to each other. So now, getting to know you, I've recognized that, when we get close to the wire, you usually do get a little bit, how can I say it, excited, animated. You get a little bit, there's some tension going on, which is understandable. But what's great is that I've come to pick up on it. So I know those signs, and that you've become self-aware of it. And also, okay, I'm freaking out a little bit because it's getting close. So it's like you're able to adjust for that, which I think is amazing. But to the idea of prep, it's amazing because, we're like, oh yeah, the party's in like a week. Like, we'll do this, that, and the other thing. And okay, it's in 3 days. We still have this to do. And then we have 2 days. And I was so far as like, I was thinking, oh yeah, like I want to wash the windows and I want to do this, that, and the other thing. And I was like, forget about it. And it's like, so it seems as though there's always so much more to do. Well, I guess it also depends on the level. Some people just crack open a 6-pack and say, hey, go at it, which is fine too. But for me, it seems as though there's always a lot more to do than I imagine. So do I really allocate enough time for it? Right?
Well, that's the thing. That's one of the things that, for sure, if I would do things differently, like I love having the food all organized, and we wanted it to be a very certain way. And so I always underestimate the time it's going to take.
Sure.
So like we bought all the groceries on Friday, but then we were and I prepped one thing Friday night. Remember, I said, I got to at least do something.
Right.
And then it was like Saturday, it was like hitting the road, like right at the beginning. So.
But also another thing that, like in the prep, doing washing the windows, one of the co-hosts is like, oh, like don't bother that, like don't even bother. Essentially, they said like don't bother like cleaning. Like we'll do it after the party, which makes a lot of sense. But there's no way like I could not clean the bathrooms and certain things.
No.
But I was gonna obviously mop the floors and do all that. And it's like, people aren't really gonna care about the floors being mopped, but we're gonna do it afterwards, right?
Yeah.
So it's like you're gonna do the double clean. But my sense of ownership and pride makes me want to do those things. But I guess at some point we have to prioritize and say, okay, there's only a week left. What are you going to do?
Well, the place looked great. Like in the end, it looked amazing. You did a lot of things we had a bunch of artwork from your mom that had to be hung and dealt with, and putting stuff away. Actually, okay, so let's start. What worked?
But dim lighting helps, right? So the lower the lights, the less clean it has to be. So daytime parties, you better be spotless.
Yes, daytime parties. So, okay, so what worked? Let's start at the beginning.
Sure.
So I think what worked was planning early, starting to plan early. Like we started back in March.
Well, this was going to be our Sexo de Mayo party, right? So it was the 6th of May. And we started planning that back in March.
Yeah, March.
Yeah, so we formed a committee, right? We actually, we didn't set out to form a committee, but it kind of evolved organically. And then we had the 6 of us working on that with, 4 core people. And that really helped. So plan in advance. And notes to myself, give myself more time than I imagine it's going to take. Because looking at it in hindsight, it did take a lot of time, right? So waiting till the end kind of turned up the heat on ourselves. We imposed those anxieties.
Yes, but we did start the idea early, and even though we didn't have everything ready, like we did a lot of stuff, which we'll show you. We did start letting people know the date early, even if we didn't have everything ready. So we started letting people know, and we started a Google Doc, which was amazing because that allowed us to sort of have a shared document that you and I at least can collaborate on, like what we needed to do, what we needed to get, who was invited, and all of that stuff. So the Google Doc was helpful. The other thing that was super awesome was starting with a theme.
Yeah.
So we had this idea, and I'm gonna show
I wish we could show some of the pictures. I wish we could have. We took a lot of pictures with consent, always with consent. We took a lot of pictures. There weren't any sex pictures taken.
No.
And there were pictures because it was a masquerade. People, I think, felt more comfortable being photographed in that. But again, always ask for consent, right? Never assume that because you feel a certain level of comfort, the other person's going to feel it.
Yeah, so we created a theme which we called. You came up with and I'm showing it, called gold fingering.
Well, we were throwing around a couple of ideas, right? So Sexo de Mayo, we were going to go with a kind of like Taco Thursday kind of theme, but then we thought, well, beans and stuff, maybe not. So, but then we were throwing out a whole bunch of different ideas, and then we thought, well, maybe we go elegant, make it like a black tie event, and then who's more elegant than James Bond? So we kind of did the gold finger and playing that with gold fingering. And it was 0069. It was a lot of fun.
Yes.
And everybody showed up, just to the nines. It was awesome.
Yeah. So it was great to have a theme, and then it allowed us to play off of that the entire evening. And it carried right through to everything, and the decorations, and people really loved the idea. Like, it was not too hard. You just had to dress up. You didn't have to buy an elaborate costume. You just needed to have some dress clothes and a mask, and people wore beautiful masks.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Let me say a point. Excuse me, a point or two about that is that if you want to make a theme and it sounds fantastic to you, which it might well be, you have to also consider how are people going to respond to that, right? So if it's too elaborate, is it going to make it difficult for people? And unfortunately, sometimes what happens also is that there's a certain disparity between some people's enthusiasm and other people's enthusiasm. So some people might spend a lot of time making their costumes and dress fully in it, and then other people show up in jeans and t-shirt or whatever, and it kind of really changes the mood of the party. So we suggest making sure that people are on the same page. So getting kind of like-minded people who are going to be participants, or letting them know it's expected. Like, we're asking you to, dress accordingly, please. Some people, for example, KST, they will even say that you will not be permitted in if you're not in a proper attire.
KST is Kinky Salon Toronto.
Of course. What else could it be?
But I think the idea of having a theme is great to help you. It helps you plan, decide what you're going to wear. So you're not like, oh, what am I going to wear? But it not making it too elaborate that people will just say, oh, I can't do that and not come, or I'm not going to do that and show up in jeans and a t-shirt. And I think it's sexy when people dress up. So we had been talking about that. So that's why we picked that particular theme. So that was our theme.
And not only is it fun for that, but also in the anticipation, right? You're looking forward to it. So on May 6th, we've got this party where we're dressing this way, and it's, it gives you something to look forward to. I think it's a lot of fun. It raises the level of excitement and enthusiasm. Yeah.
So in terms of the planning as well, and sort of the after planning, is the same couple that we started this idea with also offered to stay over. And so, at the end of the night, we kind of put the basic things away and everyone went to bed. And then we woke up in the morning, had coffee, beautiful coffee on the terrace. And then we got to work. And it's true. Many hands make
for light work.
Yeah. And we had fun, and then we went for breakfast. And so it was a beautiful, even though we were all exhausted, it was a beautiful kind of rounding up of the thing. So so getting help. So food is always important at a party, I think. As somebody who gets hungry.
I've been to parties, and not knocking it. I mean, it's just your own preference, but I've been to parties where it literally is a bag of chips and six pack. And it's so it depends on your own level of desire and commitment. You have that Martha Stewart vein in you. You like to do that spread, right? You got the Julia Childs thing going on. Yes. And it's wonderful. But there's no shame in putting out whatever is that rocks your boat, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. But it's nice having food. And people, it was funny at first, we put all the food out, people arrived and they were just all drinking. I was like, oh my God, nobody's going to eat the food. And it was quite an elaborate spread, I think. And we really made a lot of things easy. We wanted to be elegant and not messy. That was part of your thing. So a lot of things on sticks and that sort of thing. So it looked really great and all of that. So, and what we did different this time was it was mostly vegetarian and vegan, like almost entirely, except for a hot crab dip I made just because I had the ingredients, and people had no problem with that. Yeah. It was actually pretty great. And the people that were vegan were super appreciative. And, as we're moving in that direction, I think it was nice for us too.
Yeah. So. The omnivores didn't seem to be chomping at the bit, wanting to cannibalize anybody. They seemed perfectly okay with the crudité that we had out. But one other thing that was good about our menu planning was that obviously we reached out to people and we asked them if they were gluten intolerant or had any peanut allergies, anything like that. So checking with them, letting them know first, right?
Yeah. So the other thing we did, which I think worked really well and people thought was really awesome in terms of organization, was we wanted a way of communicating in an easy way, like all the information people need to know, like from the directions to like how to get there, where to park, like what the theme was,
where to smoke, where not to smoke,
all the do's and don'ts that we came up with. I think we shared that in our other one. But I actually created, it was like, should we do a Google Doc? We created a group chat, which I think was awesome. But it's hard to put all that stuff. And as people are added to the group chat, they might miss things. So we actually created a web page.
We did. And by we mean Tara did.
Okay.
Thank you again for that, Tara.
So I'll just quickly show you it just because I'm super proud. So it had our theme. And then it had, it had a countdown, which is now gone. So it had the dates. Oh, the time is really important. 7 p.m. cocktails, meet and greet. We had a whole description of what it is and, the theme and when to arrive. So we wanted people to arrive as close as possible to 7. And so we had an early start, which was very specific. And then we had a link to the group chat, what to wear and bring.
Well, the early start was because it was a cocktail party to begin, right?
It was a cocktail party. And I think sometimes people, though, still start parties at 9 or 10. And then it makes if you're having the play activity, it makes it go much later.
Sure.
So then we had all the do's and don'ts, and there was many more do's than don'ts. But we wanted people to do stuff. So letting people know about allergies, STI testing, consent. We're not going to go through all of these, but these are all going to be part of our guide. But don't attend the party if you're not feeling well.
And we had somebody actually reach out to us and saying that they were feeling kind of iffy, and in the sake of self-preservation, we asked them to refrain from coming, which they didn't, and we missed seeing them, but it was good for the overall. I just realized we had a 7 a.m. start and we finished at 5. That's a
7 p.m.
7 p.m. Sorry, we had a 10-hour party.
Yeah,
that's a long time.
That's a long time.
No one has taken 2 days to recover.
But the early thing is good. Like some people had, done that before. It's like, oh, should you start at 9? But then what? By the time you get started, people meet each other, arrive and all that. It means that you're starting play much earlier in the evening.
But it was interesting too, because at this time of year, the sun is still up. So like you're coming to a party with the sun up. It's different than some of the other parties. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, so we did the webpage and the group chat, and you talked a bit about pictures, but I think it's important to take pictures when people are dressed up and make an effort. And you were really great about doing that. We took a great group photo, and then we were able to share those in the chat. Yeah. So you're not likely going to be able to take pictures in the play part.
Well, unless you have consent.
Unless you have consent. Yeah. But people do love pictures while they're dressed up because they don't.
Well, it's a nice memento, right? It's nice to look back and say, oh yeah, I remember when we went there. Like for me, because sometimes I have a little memory recall issue. So having these pictures is just a wonderful souvenir.
Yeah. One of the other things that worked well that we did do in advance was we created 3 different playlists on Spotify.
Well, for the moods, right? They were going to kind of help regulate the theme. So we had a cocktail playlist for the early part. Then we had a little get down and boogie kind of disco dance kind of part, right? Which kind of made a nice transition from the cocktail, got everybody kind of loosened up. And then we had a let's get it on playlist where it was kind of, less lyrical and more instrumental kind of.
Yeah, just, more groovy,
vibe, chill.
And people also commented on the music. And I think what was good, with the exception of switching over between the different playlists, it made it pretty easy. Like at one point I know you changed a couple songs, I think at some point, but I was like, this is pretty easy. And I was like, wow, how did this all come together? So we will.
The days before, you have to take out the 8-track and put in the other 8-track? Or
change the record. So as part of our guide, I think we'll include the links to those 3 playlists so you can use them as well.
Well, the one playlist had like very much James Bond theme music, right? So that was appropriate for this party. You might not want that for your other party. Yeah, we can make it accessible.
Yeah. So no red wine. So
that was one of the don'ts. And it was so well received. Somebody else shared, because we had been to a party where somebody had knocked over red wine on the host's white carpet, and it was a disaster. we spent about 2 hours cleaning it up, putting salt on it and the whole deal. Anyway, big mess. And then one of the guests came over and she's like, oh my God, I wish I would have thought to say that at my party, because somebody also spilled red wine all over their mother's bench, and it was like a disaster. It was like a fabric bench. Anyway, it was a big deal. So the point being, if you feel uncomfortable at something, if you are determined that you don't want it, then feel free to say that you don't want these things, right? Because sometimes I think maybe like, oh, I don't want to seem like I'm uptight, asking people not to do this or the other thing, but go ahead and do that. And as we see, it was well received. So.
Yeah, and I think at some point people did spill, like, you have glasses, you're talking, and people spilled white wine, but it's not as big a deal. But we have beautiful carpets like there, and white wine's much easier to clean up. So, yeah. So one of the don'ts we had was, where you could smoke. Tobacco versus weed. And so we had very specific rules around that, because your terrace we have shared neighbors. So they're very close on both sides. It's open. So we didn't want it. And we also didn't want smoke coming in the patio doors that go right into the play area as well. So we had a strict rule that if you wanted to smoke tobacco, you had to go down and outside. Yeah. But we did allow some weed smoking on the terrace.
So somehow the molecules don't seem to cling the same way. I don't know. It's doesn't seem as objectionable, perhaps. We'll see. We'll ask her more feedback and see what people thought about
that. Yeah, we did actually ask for feedback. I don't know if we got any in time for this, but so we also borrowed some things. So it's great to have a lot of play surfaces if you're having a lot of people. So we ended up with 16 people. It was supposed to be 18 people. And so you have to expect that people are going to want to play. So we borrowed, we have 2 beds, essentially. We have a pull-out couch bed, and then we have a regular bed, and we borrowed 1 mattress, and we borrowed 2 massage tables. We ended up using one of the massage tables, but it's nice to have different surfaces for people to use, and then also to protect those surfaces. So buying proper mattress covers and that sort of thing to protect those things.
Yeah.
Just in case.
Just in case.
But
those are good investments.
But one of the things that we did as well for our bed to make it easy to transition to sleeping without much trouble is our friends actually told us this is, you leave your sheets on, like your own bed sheets on, and then you cover over top of it with another, waterproof cover, and then a sheet over that. So at the end of the night, all we had to do was take off the top 2 layers and throw a blanket on, and our bed was ready.
Isn't that awesome, right? So you're not having to make the bed at 5 o'clock in the morning or sleep in a puddle or whatever. It's just like, take it off and boom, there you go. It's a nice little magic trick.
Yeah, so that was really
Thanks
good.
for that hack.
Yes. So the other thing we had was towels, lots of towels. So our friends lent us a basket of towels, which we had in the downstairs bathroom, which has a shower. And then we had extra towels upstairs where the play area was, so that people could put them down in case they expected spillage of any sort, or that sort of thing, so that we weren't constantly changing sheets upstairs. And I think people were pretty good about that. The other thing we did is we had a whole long table out that we had all of our, like a whole selection of condoms and lube and toys and
Wipes,
that sort of thing.
Mouthwash.
And oh yes, that's it. Both bathrooms had mouthwash with little cups and wipes so that people could clean up in between partners, because that's important.
Yeah, I mean, you're having a great party, right? You're having fun and everything, and you just want to go from one to another. It's almost like an open buffet smorgasbord with consent. But the thing is also going from person to person, we have to be mindful of what we're bringing there. So rinsing, wiping, all those things in between is recommended and ideal, please.
Yeah. And we had extra garbage cans so that people could throw things out. So you weren't left with wrappers all over the place.
Or something in your hand and like, where do I put this? And just throw it against the wall. Yeah,
I know. They're practical things, but I think they're super important. So
well, and you might, you're doing so many other things, you might overlook it. You might forget. Pardon.
Lighting. So the lighting is super important.
So important for me. Music and sound. Yeah.
Music and sound. And so we're lucky we had set up the IKEA Tradfill whatever lighting downstairs. So all the lamps downstairs have they're on a single like remote, but they have multiple colors. So that was nice. So we could change the colors. But downstairs we also had bought those we had bought a bulb that was like a disco light that we could put in one of the lamps. And then we had 2 other portable ones that you plug in, and so it makes more of a disco atmosphere. That was fun. And then upstairs we have 2 separate rooms, and so we had a separate controller for both, so they could be different colors. And then you put down some LEDs on the floor as well that were like red, so that it was like dim but good.
Yeah. But speaking of the mood in all of that, right? One of the other things that as a superhost we want to do is we want to take a step back and look at how the mood of the party is going. Is everybody seeming like they're doing fairly well? And then look to the periphery and see, are there any people who might seem as though they're kind of like a little bit outside, and just do a casual check-in and find out how they're doing. So, you might have somebody who's more of an introvert, and being at a party like this, while they might want to be there, it might be a little bit much for them. So maybe offer them a place where they can go that feels as though they're not having to be in the middle of this, or just simply check in, find out how you're doing, because their partner might be doing that as well, but maybe they're not, and maybe it's just a good idea, right? I mean, you want to always be aware of how your guests are doing. Exactly. So have a good time yourself, but you have that responsibility as a host. And
I think it's also good to have, reminded me to have a neutral zone. So at our place, your place, we have an upstairs and downstairs. So the downstairs was very much neutral, I would say, for most of the evening. So people, and the upstairs was more of the play area. So if you wanted to go somewhere else, you could either go out to the terrace, or you could go downstairs and where all the food was, and hang out there. And I think some people did that. So people went up and down depending on what they were in the mood for.
They went up and down and in and out as one. But generally speaking, I think most parties, the kitchen is usually a pretty neutral, safe zone. People can hang out there.
Yeah.
One of the other things we did in preparation is we let our neighbors know that we're having this party, right? And there was some curiosity, because I said we're having a little celebration, and we have some cute neighbors too. They kind of look like they're like, But no, we let them know that we were going to be mindful of the noise level. We try and keep it to a minute, but that it might be a little bit louder than usual. And they were both A-okay with it. But it's just the idea of being courteous, right? Being mindful of the arena in which we're in.
Yes,
so that's always a big thing.
That's true. And that was one of the things, the do's, is that one of the do's was to bring a robe or something to cover yourself up if you wanted to go out on the terrace, because it's quite open and we have a building straight across from us. Although, I mean, they do various things too. We had some good views that night too.
Well, the view from our loft faces a building right across the street, very close. And one level is a sorority, and the next level is a fraternity, and the next level is artists. And they put on some shows sometimes too. So.
Yeah, but it was funny. They didn't seem like they were even paying attention, because at one point downstairs, we still had all the windows open, and we were the dance party turned a little less clothed at one point before we went upstairs, and they didn't seem to be paying attention. Maybe they were. I don't know.
I think some of the guests were mentioning that it seemed as though there was a show coming back the other way, that they had their lights on without the curtains drawn, and they were changing. They were getting ready to go out, but they were not shy about it. Anyway, that's a whole nother tangent, right?
So then guests. So some things that guests did.
The robe. So,
I mentioned the robe.
Yeah, wearing a robe. But if in lieu of a robe, during the play part, some people were nude and wanted to sit down, so they themselves took it upon themselves to put a towel down before sitting down on chairs and stuff, which is kind of nice, right?
Yeah. So that's how one of the things you could be a guest is just being considerate to your host. Like, would they want your bare bum on their furniture, sort of thing?
You can put it on my face, but not on the chair, please.
Another thing that people did, which was awesome. So as a great guest, people were being mindful of collecting things. Like at one point, one of our friends was just like picking up cups and collecting them all, and asked me where they go and that sort of thing. And so people were sort of pitching in, which was sort of nice.
Yeah, you needn't be a maid or a butler. It's not your responsibility, but it's always welcome, right? When people do a little bit like that. Yeah. And like you said, many hands make for light work. So the party never got completely out of control, like a big mess. It was easy, but it wasn't so uptight either. So it was very cool.
Yeah. I mean, as a host, I was paying attention to those things, and I was sort of picking things up and looking at the food. And so that's something you need to do as a host. But I think making it easy on yourself to do that minimally. Like I put most of the food out so that I didn't have to refill. And the only thing we kept in the fridge was your famous fruit sticks, which come out cold, in the break, just the first intermission. And it's always great. And people love that cold fruit.
Well, and it's wonderful too, because all that sugar, right? So it gives you a recharge of energy very quickly, and you're good for the second round or third round. That's always fun. But also, I think it's something you mentioned, the idea of being able and willing to receive help. Some people don't want anybody
Yes.
to do it, and other people want to help and they feel good in helping. So, you know, have
Yeah,
a
let them
dialogue about it.
help. Like,
Well,
say
if you're,
yes,
yeah,
receive, be your receive.
if you can.
And this is where one of the things that I might do differently next time is plan the menu more than a day in
Mm.
advance, because our friends really wanted to help and bring things, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And then, and so people would have brought things if I had said, oh, this is what I'm making, and they'd be like, okay, I can make stuff. Like, our friends just went and bought stuff anyways,
Mhm.
that day of, and then they brought it early, which was great. Because it's my mom. One of the things my mom told me is, like, if you're going to a party and you're bringing something like food, you plate it and bring your own plate. Don't
Yeah.
expect your host is going to do that for
Or
you.
have it. Yeah, for sure. No,
But
that's a
in
good
this
idea.
case, it was nice because they brought it early, and then we decided on what plates to use, and they would have for certainly brought things, but it just makes it easier.
Yeah.
So
But you speak about planning the menu, and that makes me think also about curating the party and planning the guest list. So,
yes.
there's a big spectrum of sexual interests and sexualities and sexual identities and all that. So, should we go so far as to kind of consider how people identify or self-identify and what they would be compatible with? So, for example, if I am wanting to have a rather straight vanilla type of party, and I have a lot of friends who are really into BDSM, would it be as alluring for them? And it might be. They might mix it, but we might even announce it. Well, this is going to be a real fetish party, and there's going to be, like, a lot of this, that, and the other thing. And some people might be like, "That's cool, but it's not really my jam." So maybe have an idea of who or what type of party you want to have. Goes back to the theme also, but then we might even go so far as to make little surveys, right? So, there's a great survey where you kind of ask, or you answer a number of questions, and it gives you a kind of assessment as to where you are on kink spectrum,
yes.
right? So, or even with your sexuality, some people are very, very hetero. Some people are more flexible. Some people are very gay. Whatever it is, and sometimes having this kind of information might help inform, so people feel like they are well within their crowd. But I think we had a good mix, and I think nobody felt out of place as far as we know, and I think it was well received. But those type of considerations might serve you well.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about. It was funny at one point at the party we were talking about who at the party was bisexual. You know what I mean? And we didn't totally know. I mean, we knew most of it, but it was like, oh, so it's kind of like if you want to have a party that's, some people might want to know if there's going to be activity. I don't know.
Sure. Well, yeah, because some people are like, oh,
they might not be comfortable with it.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so it's taking the pulse.
Yeah, so you can do quizzes, you can share those things and that sort of thing. And yeah.
And also, if anybody has any special preferences as to what they're wanting or not wanting, it's also a chance to have that. It always comes back to the same thing, right? Communication.
Yeah, I think at the party there was some different interests, and people had to communicate. They communicated their desire, or that didn't want to be part of that, and that's part of it, right?
Yeah.
Being participating in these sorts of things is knowing what it is you want or don't want. And so we'd love to hear from you in the comments if you have great tips and stuff that we've missed on either today or the other one.
Or anything you felt that we did or shouldn't do. We're welcome to that as well. Constructive criticism is always good.
Yeah, I was just thinking of something as I was saying that, and then it completely forgot what I was going to add.
But it always comes back to you.
I know it always comes back to me. Oh, I was going to say, I know.
See, it's the power of suggestion. Because if you tell yourself, oh, I can't remember, you're going to stop looking for it. But if you tell yourself you can remember, you're going to remember, well, you're framing it in that positive way. There's a better chance, I think.
I just wanted to do a disclaimer, I guess, and maybe I should have done at the beginning, because the group is called Let's Talk Polyamory, and we are talking about having a sex party and activities that I would say more are on the scale of the libertine or swinger scale. So if you are someone who's looking at being polyamorous or opening up a relationship, it doesn't mean that you have to do sex parties or engage in any sort of these things. This is something that we do. We're a little bit of a blend of, I think, all things open relationship, polyamorous, and libertine or swinger. And so we enjoy doing this as an activity, but it's certainly not, I wouldn't say it's a requirement. And certainly if you look at the definition of polyamory, it would not say, if there was such a perfect definition, it wouldn't say that you must go to sex parties and, have sex in front of, your partner. Like, I think that's, I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, well, the polyamory is used in this context as a big umbrella term for everybody who is open to being open.
Yeah. And I think at the party too, there was a mix of people who, in terms of how they identify, and some people were very specific about they do not identify as polyamorous.
Right.
And there was also, we had a discussion about the term swinger and libertine, because in Quebec, I think libertine is the preferred
over swinger
term, because in French, swinger was échanger, to exchange, and it seems like they didn't.
It's a bit of a derogatory term.
So I like libertine.
But you know, it's funny on that note, talking about polyamory and many loves, and some of the people, they were like, "Oh no, we're not polyamorous. Like, we don't have emotional connection, and yet we love them, and we know they love us."
Oh
so,
yeah.
Call it what you want. The vibe is still there.
I feel, of all things, if I could say what the overall sentiment I feel after the party is, I feel loved. It's not, for me, we were talking about what the best part of the party was. And honestly, like, it wasn't the sex part. I mean, the sex was awesome, but it was like the gathering of friends and the love, and, a couple of friends, like, I don't know how many people told me that they loved me that night, but not when we were having sex. It was when we were downstairs and dancing and just loving each other. And, someone was telling a funny story about me and just saying, "Oh, I just love this girl so much," and I was just like, I love you too. That's what I love about being polyamorous.
Yeah. The ease at which we can say, "I love you." Yeah, because maybe there are other communities. Well, there are other communities out there where people have very strong emotional bonds with each other, but I don't know that I've ever received it or been able to express it as openly. And there was a couple that were leaving the party, and I said to him, I said, "I love you," and he goes, "I love you too, man." And it's like, maybe I did that with some of my hockey buddies, but not as fluidly, not as accessibly. Yeah, so it's wonderful that we have that luxury and that security to announce that, because, like, I guess after you have sex, it's like, well, it already. It's like, that big thing is removed. Now you've seen me at my most vulnerable. It's easy for me to express my emotional level of attachment and appreciation for you.
And even though we've had sex with these people, we actually talked with our little planning committee. Everyone came over on Tuesday night because they were dropping off things, and we ended up having an impromptu dinner party, which was just, we sat around, we made something really simple, and we just loved that. And that's all we did that night. We planned the party. Our chairperson kept bringing us back to the party, and
Thank you.
We just shared food and conversation and love, and we talked about doing that more regularly, just keeping it simple and seeing each other in that sort of way. So it's not about all the sex, but I just wanted to say that at the end, because it is Let's Talk Polyamory, and going to a sex party is not for everyone. It doesn't have to be. And so it's all
There's no one way to do it. Yeah.
There's no one way. It's the only right way, as we always say, is the right way that's right for you. So so I think that's good. Well, we talked longer than I thought.
Yeah. So
back to coffee.
So let's hear about when your party is, and I'd love to hear from you.
Yes, and if you want that guide when it's ready, let us know. We're still putting it together, but we hope to have something for you soon. Awesome. Thanks, babe.
Thank you.
All right. Back to the Fed office. Bye, everyone.